This is the story of something that happened to me 2 years ago. I still get chills when I think about it. I was in college back then, staying in a hostel far away from home. And what I'm going to tell you is not something I made up. This is real as the fear I felt that night. So it started when I moved into a new hostel building. It was old, like really old, and half of it was under renovation. They had opened up one wing for students, and the other wing was locked off with chains on the doors. They said it was too unsafe, something about broken floors and loose ceilings. But people had other stories. Whispers about that side of the hostel being haunted. I thought it was just silly rumors, you know how college kids are. Anyway, I got room 212. It was on the second floor, at the very end of the corridor. It was quiet, maybe too quiet, but I liked that. I had a roommate for the first month, AJ. Nice guy, a little jumpy, but we got along well. But then, one night he packed his bags without warning and left. He didn't even say goodbye. I just found a note on his bed that said, "Sorry, I can't stay here anymore. Something's wrong in this room." I thought he was being dramatic. I even laughed it off at first. But that was before things started happening. It started small. My things would move around on their own. I'd put my phone on the table before going to sleep, and in the morning it would be under the bed. My cupboard would be open even though I knew I had locked it. Once, I heard my name whispered when I was brushing my teeth. I turned around, thinking someone was there, but no one was. The hall was empty. I even checked behind the door. One night, I stayed up late watching something on my laptop. The power went out around midnight, which wasn't unusual. But the strange thing was, my laptop shut off too, even though it had full charge. I sat there in the dark, and then I heard it. The sound of breathing. Not mine. Slow, raspy breathing, like someone was standing behind me. I froze. I didn't move for at least a minute. I wanted to look, but my body wouldn't let me. Then, something touched my shoulder. I jumped and switched on the flashlight on my phone. There was no one there, but I saw something in the corner of the room. It looked like a shadow, but it didn't move with the light. It stayed there, like it was watching me, and the room felt cold. Not normal cold, it felt like something was sucking the warmth out of the air. I didn't sleep that night. The next day I asked the warden if I could shift rooms. She looked at me strangely, then said, "Room 212? You should have never been put there." I asked why. She hesitated, then said, "That room is unlucky. 2 years ago, a boy died there. They said it was suicide, but some students said they heard him screaming before he fell from the window. After that, we locked it. I don't know why they gave it to you." I felt sick. No one had told me this before. No one. That evening, I went to a senior, Priya, who had been staying in the hostel for 3 years. I asked her about the room. She nodded slowly and said, "I don't usually talk about this, but yeah, something's wrong with that place. The boy who died, his name was Raghav. He was always scared, always saying someone was watching him from the mirror. One night, he ran out of the room screaming, saying he saw himself smiling back at him, but it wasn't him. The next day he was gone. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. But everything started making sense. The cold air, the shadow, the whispers, even Ajay leaving without saying a word. That night I locked the room door and decided to sleep with the lights on. I even kept a small religious idol next to me, hoping it would help. I must have dozed off around 2 a.m. And then I heard the knock. It wasn't on the door. It was from inside the room, like someone knocking on the cupboard door. 3 slow knocks. Knock, knock, knock. I sat up, heart pounding. The room was freezing again. I looked toward the cupboard, and it was shaking. Just a little, but enough to make a sound. I whispered, "Who's there?" Stupid, I know, but I couldn't help it. And then the cupboard door opened, slowly, and I saw a hand, pale, bony, with long fingers. It reached out, touched the floor, and then pulled back in. The cupboard slammed shut. I screamed and ran out of the room, barefoot, down the stairs to the guard's cabin. He was half asleep, but when he saw me, he stood up immediately. I told him what I saw, what happened, everything. He didn't say a word. He just made me sit and gave me some water. After a long pause, he said, "You're not the first one. Others have seen it too. That room should have stayed locked." The next morning, I packed my things. I didn't even bother asking for an official transfer. I just moved my stuff into an empty room on the first floor. That same day, I locked room 212 again. This time, with thick chains and a sign that read, "Under maintenance, do not enter." But that's not the end. A month later, a new boy joined the hostel. No one warned him. They gave him room 212. On the first night, he ran out screaming. He said he saw a boy standing at the window, looking down and laughing. That was the last time anyone stayed in that room. They finally sealed the entire wing after that. Even now, sometimes when I visit that hostel, I walk past that side and feel something watching from the upper floors. A chill in the air. A silence that feels heavy. So yeah, that's the story I wanted to tell you. Believe it or not, it happened. I lived it. And if you ever stay in a hostel and the room feels too quiet, too cold, or if the mirror feels wrong, trust your gut. Some rooms should just stay locked. This is the story of something that still haunts me to this day. A story I never thought I'd tell out loud. But I think it's time. I'm going to tell you about the most disturbing, twisted thing I ever experienced. It happened when I was in college, staying in a hostel that was supposed to be newly renovated. At first, I was excited. It was my first time living away from home, and I thought hostel life would be fun. Late night talks, food runs, pranks. You know, the usual. But what I got was nothing like that. The hostel was huge, 5 floors with long, narrow hallways and rooms that all looked the same. But there was one wing, Block C, that was always dark. No one stayed there. I remember asking one of the seniors why, and she just smiled weirdly and said, "You'll find out." I thought she was joking. I wish she had been. I got room 307, right next to the locked hallway that led to Block C. The door to that block had chains across it and a rusty sign that said, "Under repair." But there was no sound of any repair work. Ever. It just stood there, cold and silent, like a part of the building that had been forgotten. At first, everything was fine. My roommate Sagar was chill. We got along pretty well. But about a week in, Sagar started acting strange. He'd wake up in the middle of the night, sweating and gasping. He said he had nightmares that someone was standing next to his bed whispering his name. I laughed it off. "You're dreaming, man," I told him. "Get more sleep." But one night, I woke up to him sitting on the floor, rocking back and forth, staring at the wall. His voice was low and shaky. He kept saying, "Don't let her in. Don't let her in. Over and over again. I asked him who he was talking about. He looked at me, eyes wide, terrified, and said, "She comes from Block C." I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, Sagar packed his stuff and left. Just like that. No goodbye, no explanation to anyone. I found his toothbrush still in the holder, his shoes under the bed. It was like he'd run. After that, the room felt different, heavier, colder. And then it started. The knocking. It would happen exactly at 2:13 a.m., soft at first, like someone tapping gently on the wall behind my bed. Then louder, more desperate, like someone or something was trying to get in. I thought it was a prank, maybe someone from another room messing with me. But I checked. No one was outside. The hallway would be dead silent. The lights would flicker, but that's common in old buildings, right? Right? One night, I got fed up. I stayed up with my phone. Camera pointed at the wall. At 2:13, the knocking began. I hit record and ran to the hallway. Empty. But when I checked the footage, my heart dropped. There was a shadow in the corner of the room. It wasn't mine. It was tall, with long hair, just standing there, watching, and I hadn't seen it with my own eyes. That's when I started asking questions. I cornered one of the hostel staff, an old caretaker who had been there forever. He didn't want to talk at first, but after I pressed him, he gave in. He said years ago, Block C was open like the rest, but one night a girl was found dead in room C13. She had hung herself from the ceiling fan. No note, no reason. But people said she had complained about hearing whispers, seeing someone in the mirror behind her. Her roommate had left just days before the incident. After that, strange things began happening in Block C. Students heard crying at night. Doors slammed shut on their own. Some said they saw her walking down the hall with her head tilted at an unnatural angle. Eventually they sealed it, chained the doors, called it under repair, but she was still there, still angry, still waiting. The scariest part? My room, 307, shared a wall with room C13. They were back to back. That night, I barely slept. I kept hearing scratching behind the wall, like nails dragging slowly down wood. Then the mirror above my study table cracked. Just a thin line across it, but it was enough to make me leave the room and sleep in the common area. I couldn't take it anymore. I asked to change rooms. The warden denied it, said all rooms were full. I begged. I told him everything. He laughed, said I was being paranoid, so I did something stupid. I tried to open the chain door to Block C. I don't know what I was thinking. Maybe I wanted to prove to myself there was nothing there. Maybe I wanted answers. But at 2:10 a.m., I stood in front of that door with a wire cutter I borrowed from the maintenance room. I clipped the chain. The door creaked open. Inside, it was like stepping into another world. The hallway was darker than it should have been. Dust everywhere, and cold. I swear I could see my breath. The lights didn't work, so I used my phone flashlight. I walked slowly, my footsteps echoing. Room C13 was at the far end. I reached it. The door was slightly open. I pushed it gently. It let out a groan. Inside, the room looked normal at first, just old and dusty. But then I saw it. The rope still hanging from the fan, swinging, just slightly. And then my flashlight flickered. I felt it before I saw it. Something behind me. I turned. She was there. Long black hair, face pale and twisted, mouth stretched into a horrible smile. Her head tilted sharply to one side, rope marks still visible on her neck. She whispered, "You're in my room now." I ran. I didn't even look back. I just ran, heart hammering, breath caught in my throat. When I reached the main hallway, I slammed the door shut and rechained it. Then I threw the wire cutter out the window. I didn't sleep for days. Eventually, I left the hostel, told my parents I wanted to stay off campus. They didn't ask too many questions. I think they could see something had changed in me. Sometimes I still hear knocking in my dreams, at exactly 2:13 a.m. And when I look in the mirror, I swear, just for a second, I see someone standing behind me. So if you ever stay in a hostel and you hear a knock from the wall, don't answer it. And for God's sake, never open a door that was meant to stay locked. What I'm about to tell you is something that happened to me a few months ago, and to this day, I can't shake the feeling that I'm being watched. It's something that's hard to explain, but I'll try my best. And believe me, after hearing this, you'll probably think twice before staying in any hostel ever again. So it was my first year of college, and I was really excited about the whole living away from home thing. I was ready for the freedom, the late night talks, the food orders, and the new friendships. But I quickly learned that some things are better left unknown, like the secrets of the hostel I ended up staying in. The hostel was a huge building, 6 stories high, with old brick walls and a creaky staircase that made the entire place feel like something out of a horror movie. The management was friendly enough, but there was always this weird, unspoken tension in the air. The seniors who had been there for years would always give us newcomers strange looks when we asked about the building's history. They would just smile and change the subject. It was unsettling, but I brushed it off. College life was busy, and I had no time for rumors and ghost stories. But things took a turn the second I moved into my room, number 204. It was on the 2nd floor, near the end of a long, narrow hallway. The room itself seemed fine at first, nothing out of the ordinary. A single bed, a desk, and a small closet. It wasn't luxury, but it was more than livable. However, there was one thing that didn't sit right with me. The room had a mirror, and the mirror for some reason felt wrong. It wasn't big, just a small rectangular piece of glass hanging above my desk. But every time I looked into it, something seemed off. I couldn't explain it at first, but there was a feeling. Like the mirror was holding something back, something waiting to be discovered. I told myself it was just my imagination. After all, I was still adjusting to this new environment, and maybe I was just overthinking things. But that wasn't the end of it. A few nights after I moved in, I woke up in the middle of the night sweating. I had the strangest feeling that I wasn't alone. At first, I thought it was just a bad dream. But as I sat up in bed, my heart stopped when I saw something in the corner of the room. Something that wasn't there before. A figure. A shadow. Almost like a person, standing still in the farthest corner. I rubbed my eyes, trying to clear the sleep from them. But when I looked again, the figure was still there. It was dark, indistinct, but its presence was undeniable. I called out, "Hello? Is someone there?" But the figure didn't move. My voice trembled, and as I reached for my phone, I turned on the flashlight. When the beam of light hit the corner, it was empty. Nothing. There was nothing there. But I knew what I saw. The next day, I told one of the seniors, Kieran, about what happened. She was quiet for a moment, then gave me a knowing look. "You saw her, didn't you?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Her? Who are you talking about?" Kieran leaned in closer. The girl in the mirror. She doesn't like new people coming into her space. My blood ran cold. I stared at her, unsure of whether she was joking or serious. The mirror in room 204, Kieran continued. It used to be in another room, but after what happened to her, it was moved here. No one stays in room 204 for long. There's a reason the management doesn't like to talk about it. I demanded to know what happened, and Kieran sighed, as if she had been expecting this question. They say the girl was a student here a few years ago, she began. She was staying in this room, alone, just like you. But she started acting different. She would talk to herself, spend hours in front of that mirror, whispering things under her breath. One night she went missing. They found her in the basement, dead. But they say she was already gone before they found her. The rumors. Some say she never really left. I felt a chill in my bones. I couldn't wrap my head around it. It sounded like one of those ghost stories that people tell to spook each other. But as the days passed, I couldn't ignore the strange things happening around me. I'd hear whispers when I was alone in my room, faint, almost like a song. And the mirror. Every time I looked into it, the reflection would seem off, like something was just not quite right. It was as if I could see something in the reflection that wasn't in the room with me. Something watching, waiting. But the worst part came one evening. It was around 3 a.m., and I had just finished studying. The room was quiet, the only sound being the hum of the fan above my bed. I sat on the floor, gathering my things, when suddenly, the mirror. It cracked. A thin, jagged line appeared, down the center of the glass, as if something had pressed against it from the other side. I froze, staring at it. My breath caught in my throat. Then I saw it. A face. It wasn't mine. It was the face of a girl. Her features twisted, eyes wide with fear, as if she was trapped inside the glass. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. I backed away, my heart racing, unable to tear my eyes away from the reflection. The girl's image seemed to flicker, then vanish. I didn't stay in that room a second longer. I grabbed my things and ran down to the common area, my legs shaking. The next day I demanded to be moved to another room. The warden looked at me as if I were crazy, but when I told her everything that had been happening, she just nodded. Room 204 has always been a problem, she said. Maybe you're better off in another room. It wasn't until later that I learned the full truth. The girl in the mirror wasn't just a ghost. She was trapped, cursed to stay in that reflection, forever watching, forever waiting for someone new to take her place. The reason the room was so empty was because no one who stayed there ever truly left. They'd leave, yes, but something of them would always remain. A part of them would stay behind, inside that cursed mirror. And so, after all these years, the girl waits, watching for the next person to make the mistake of looking too closely, to step into her world. If you ever stay in a hostel, especially one with old, strange mirrors, keep your eyes away from them. Because some reflections aren't what they seem, and some things shouldn't be looked at too closely. This isn't going to be easy to hear, but I swear it's the truth. What happened to me was so weird, so terrifying. I've been afraid to talk about it until now, but I can't shake the feeling that someone, somewhere, needs to hear this. So here it goes. You're not going to believe me at first, but just hear me out. It was my second year of college. I was living in a hostel that was, to put it mildly, ancient. It was one of those buildings that looked like it should have been condemned years ago but was still standing somehow, due to budget cuts and laziness. It was a maze of hallways and dark corners, the kind of place where you never really knew if the lights would work when you flicked the switch. And the smell. It was like the building had been locked up for decades, full of old furniture, dust, and something faintly metallic in the air. But it wasn't the building that made my stomach drop every time I stepped into it. No, it was the stories. The seniors had all these little ghost stories about the place. You know, the kind of things you laugh off at first. Oh, room 301? Don't stay there, it's haunted. You hear that noise on the 4th floor? It's just the building settling. But I didn't take them seriously. Who would? It was just college folklore, right? Wrong. I'll never forget the night I moved in. I was given room 214 on the 2nd floor, right near the end of the hall. I remember the warden giving me a strange look when I walked past her desk and asked about the room. Ah, 214, she said with a weird little smile. You'll find it interesting. She didn't say anything else. I figured it was just some odd way of making a newcomer feel uncomfortable, but something about the way she said it stuck with me. The room itself seemed normal at first. Basic bed, desk, chair, and a wardrobe. But there was something off about the window. It didn't have a proper view. Instead of looking out onto the campus like most of the rooms, mine faced a dark, overgrown alley. There were these big old trees that loomed over the window, their branches scratching against the glass when the wind blew. It wasn't just creepy, it was suffocating. I tried to ignore it, and for the first few days, everything seemed fine. But then things started happening. It started with the noises. At night, when I was trying to sleep, I'd hear strange sounds, scratching noises, like something was dragging across the floor. At first, I thought it was just the building settling, or maybe rats in the walls. But it didn't stop there. The noises would get louder, more frantic. Sometimes I'd hear what sounded like muffled voices whispering. Every time I tried to look out the window to see what was causing it, all I could see were those trees, still and silent. But it wasn't until a week later that things really started to get weird. I had just gotten back from a late lecture. It was around 11 p.m., and I was exhausted. As I walked down the hallway to my room, I noticed something strange. The door to room 215, which was right next to mine, was slightly ajar. That wasn't normal. No one had been living there for weeks. I thought maybe the cleaning crew had left it open, but as I stepped closer, I noticed something I couldn't explain. There was a faint glowing light coming from inside. Curious, I knocked softly. No answer, so I pushed the door open just a little. The room was empty. No furniture, no belongings. But the light was still there. It seemed to be coming from the far corner, where the curtains hung closed. I walked toward it, but the moment I stepped inside, the light flickered and then went out completely, leaving me in total darkness. I froze. I wasn't scared at first. I thought maybe the light bulb had just burned out, but then I felt it. A cold draft rushing across my face, followed by a heavy weight in the air, like the room itself had become heavier. I couldn't breathe properly. Something was wrong. That's when I heard it, loud and clear, footsteps behind me. I spun around, expecting to see someone standing in the doorway, but no one was there. The door was shut, and I was alone. That's when I got out of there, fast. I told a few of my friends about the strange happenings, and they just laughed it off. "You're just imagining things," they said. Old buildings are creepy, that's all. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. And it wasn't just the room. The nights grew worse. The whispers, the scratching, the cold. It was like the entire hostel was alive, like it was watching me. I even started seeing things in the corner of my eye, figures darting down the hall, disappearing when I turned to look. Then came the night that changed everything. It was around 2 a.m. and I was lying in bed wide awake, staring at the ceiling. The room was cold. That familiar feeling of being watched was back. The shadows in the corner of the room seemed to stretch and twist. I tried to pull the covers over my head, but the moment I did, I heard it. A knock. It was soft, but it was there. 3 quick knocks right against the wall. I sat up, my heart racing. My mind told me to ignore it. It's just the building settling, it's nothing. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. I grabbed my phone and shone the flashlight at the wall. The knocking stopped. I didn't know what to do. I was paralyzed, my mind racing with all the horror stories I'd heard about this hostel. I stood up and moved cautiously toward the door, but as I stepped closer to the wall, something caught my eye. It was a shadow, a figure, standing just behind the curtains, barely visible in the dim light. I couldn't make out any details, just the shape of a person. It stood still, like it was waiting for me to approach. I didn't. I ran. I bolted down the hallway, my heart pounding. I didn't stop until I reached the warden's office. She wasn't there, of course, but I sat in the waiting area, too terrified to go back to my room. When the sun finally rose, I went back to room 214. It was still cold, still dark, but the strange occurrences had stopped. For a while, at least. I was too scared to sleep in my own bed, so I moved my things to the common room. That night I had a nightmare. I dreamt I was back in room 215, the door wide open, the light glowing from the far corner. But this time, the figure was there, standing. In the dark, its face covered in shadows. It reached out to me, whispering my name. I woke up with a scream, drenched in sweat. The next day I couldn't take it anymore. I packed my bags and checked out. I didn't care about the money. I didn't care about anything except getting away from that place. To this day, I don't know what happened in that hostel. I don't know who or what was haunting room 214 or why the whispers never stopped. But I'll tell you one thing. Some places are better left unexplored. Some doors are meant to stay closed. And if you ever find yourself in a hostel and the door to an empty room is ajar, don't go in, just don't, because you might not be alone.